CGTN, China Global Television Network.
New Year celebrations around the world are a time of hope and new beginnings, and traditionally bring together family and friends from near and far. But not all cultures celebrate the New Year at the same time. The Chinese New Year is taking place this year in February, and as with all years, is named after one of 12 animals. 2021 is the year of the ox, an animal in Chinese culture associated with diligence, wealth, and perseverance. In years past, one of the largest global migrations of people took place as revelers traveled home for their New Year's celebrations. However, due to the coronavirus pandemic, this year it is different. On this week's show, we look at the significance of cultural symbols both in China and Africa, and also at the impact the pandemic may have on Chinese New Year 2021. I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, all cultures across the world have certain symbols which hold deep meaning to them. One of those is the ox, which holds a deep significance to both African and Chinese people. We caught up with Kenya's Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Ababu Namwamba, to tell us more about its significance in African culture and also extend a goodwill message to China as they celebrate the Year of the Ox.
The ox is used in farming, and for a long time, Africa has used the ox for food production. Okay, it can be used in agricultural production, but the ox is also a source of food itself. It's a source of food, and indeed, you find a lot of cultural significance attached to the ox. For instance, in marriage is a significant ceremony in African culture. The ox is the prized dowry item or element in any African marriage. To date, even today, with modernity and sophistication and the central place of money in the economy, still, if I were to offer dowry to my in-laws, the most prized element of that dowry, the most prized offer, dowry in Africa is a form of appreciation. You are appreciating the family of your wife-to-be for raising a wife for you. The ox is at the center of it. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kenya, on behalf of the people of Kenya, and on behalf of my own family and friends of China, Kenyans, friends of China, I want to send a very warm, very sincere and strong message of goodwill and friendship and prosperity to all the people of China on the occasion of the Chinese New Year 2021, the Year of the Ox. May this year present China and Kenya opportunity to cooperate even more deeply, even further. May we share experiences on recovery post-COVID-19, and may this year also be a celebration of true friendship and global solidarity. Happy New Year 2021, the Year of the Ox. Shinshe.
As with all cultures, people have migrated from their home countries and settled elsewhere around the world. The island of Mauritius has one of the largest Chinatowns in Africa. and those that live on the island still hold their culture dear and have a beautiful New Year celebrations each year. My colleague Liu Feifei brings us this from Mauritius.
Mauritius is a small African island nation that sits in the Indian Ocean. In the 1800s, many Chinese laborers, artisans, and traders arrived in Mauritius, and with them, they brought their culture, their values, and their traditions. Today, Mauritius is the only country outside of Asia that celebrates Chinese New Year, which is also known as the Spring Festival, with a public holiday for everyone. To tell us more, here's Eric Lim. He is the president of the United Chinese Associations here in Mauritius.
恭喜发财，新年快乐! Chinese New Year is the most important festival for the Chinese community here in Mauritius. We start by having a very big dinner with all the family on the eve of this important festival. After the family dinner, we have also the gala dinner, which the Prime Minister of Mauritius and the Chinese ambassador in Mauritius will participate. After that, we'll have a parade held in the Chinatown street, which most of the local Chinese and Chinese over the world will be participating.
Like the Sino-Mauritians, Chinese people all over the world reunite with family and loved ones during the Spring Festival period, many traveling long distances to do so. In China alone, it's estimated that 400 million city dwellers travel back to their rural homes for the festivities, making it the largest annual human migration in the world. Needless to say, the COVID-19 pandemic is altering the traditions of Chinese New Year, and Mauritius is no exception.
This year, due to the pandemic situation in the world, and as Mauritius is still a COVID-safe country, we have managed to organize the gala dinner, but on a smaller scale. And also, for the gala show, you have only the local performers, but they did a very great job. As for the street parade, it has been cancelled for this year. But next year, we hope that the celebration will be bigger and better. Happy New Year!
Chinese New Year, much like the New Year on January 1st, is also a celebration of new beginnings. February 12th marks the beginning of the ox year. And after a year of anxiety and unpredictability in 2020, it's been predicted that 2021 will be stable and nourishing. Some are even venturing to predict economic recovery all around. And whether you believe it or not, it's certainly in keeping with tradition to say all things auspicious this time of the year. And so, Happy Chinese New Year! Liu Feifei, CGTN, Bellom, Mauritius.
And joining me now to unpack the Chinese New Year 2021 from South Africa, Professor Peng Yi, Co-Director, University of Johannesburg's Confucius Institute. In Nairobi, Cynthia Wendo, Chinese lecturer at the Strathmore University. And from Mauritius, Liu Feifei, our CGTN correspondent. Welcome everyone to Talk Africa. Feifei, let me start off with you because I want to get a little bit of your understanding of the origin of the Chinese New Year, and particularly for the benefit of our audience, because the Chinese New Year is the most important festival in China. It is the most important holiday in China. What is the relevance and the cultural origin of this celebration?
When I was a child, I didn't really know what Chinese New Year really stood for. I thought it's like a New Year just like anyone else. In fact, Chinese New Year is called Xin Nian. Xin means new, and Nian is the name of a monster that the villagers from long time ago had given to this monster that would come and terrorize the villagers. And in order to scare the monster away, they started with bamboo that they threw into the fire, which made a loud sound. This eventually evolved into what we have today, which are the firecrackers. And also they found out that the monster, Nian, was afraid of the color red. And so people started to give the hongbao, which is the tradition that we still practice today. You can see I'm wearing the red shirt to also help scare away the evil spirits, if you will.
So, Feifei, this is very interesting because it is, as you say, it is steeped in mysticism, but it has evolved over years. What are some of the traditional, cultural, mystical events that the people in China did?
Well, you know, I think the most important thing for Chinese New Year is always the fact of the family coming together. It's all about having a reunion and having this big celebratory dinner. And this continues to be true today. Me, myself, I grew up in Beijing in the early 70s before the economic reforms and whatnot. And that's what we did then. And now, more than 40 years later, this is still what people do. Although some of the nuances have changed. And later on, I'm happy to share about those changes with you.
All right. Professor Pong, the Spring Festival this year is being celebrated in the middle of the global coronavirus. How is this affecting the festivities?
For safety, persons come together in large model for celebration, eating, and best not to travel. Only can in very small model, small family, very close friends together. Such as my institute are conducting a closed Mandarin training for 20 guides from South Africa National Department of Tourism. We have gathered in Pretoria for 3 weeks. So we afford them Chinese food, but we're still very, very cautious. Yeah.
And that is the caution everybody is feeling, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program, Professor Pong. But Cynthia, you know, Africans recognize the ox, particularly in the traditional sense. But let's look at the modern aspect of the Chinese celebration and compare that for us with the Christmas festivities in Africa.
So basically, when you're looking at the Chinese festivals that is compared to now the Christmas festival, they are almost the same. Because if you're looking at the way that when we normally work in the cities, and when it is during times for Christmas, when we travel back to our rural areas, so and even see our parents. So that's the same thing that the Chinese people usually do. They go back to their homes, they go back and visit their family. So that is basically they go back home and see their parents. So another thing is that there's that migration of, when it comes to transportation, everyone is so busy buying tickets, you're going back home and you want to just arrive in time, make sure that you are there with your family, so that you'll be able to celebrate with them. And it's the same case in China. And that is what we call there's that migration of people moving from one place to the other. And even in China, what happens is that there's usually that eating together as families,
Right.
and there's usually special food that the Chinese eat, like the dumplings, And when it comes to Kenya, the same thing happens. We sit together as a family, we eat together. So they look at their celebrations together. For the Kenyans, it's the same thing. We just sit around, we wait for the New Year, and we just usher it in with shouts of Happy New Year. For the Chinese, I know it is Xinyan Kuala and all those things. So it is, I believe that all of these, they are almost the same thing. It's only
Right.
that in Kenya, we don't have animals.
So
But for the Chinese, they have.
I want to get your feeling because you're teaching at the Strathmore University, and I'm sure you're teaching African students Chinese, and I want to find out from you in terms of celebrating the Chinese festival, how much involved do you get?
When it comes to celebrations, we normally go to other universities where they hold these festivities, or even the embassy, because they usually hold such activities. So I take my students to the embassy, or even like Confucius Institutes here in there's Kenyatta University, Confucius Institute. There's also Nairobi University, Confucius Institute. So we take our students there. They have a feel. They see how decorations are like, so that they be able to even to taste even the food that is being taken during that New Year festival. So for my students, I don't think they are going to be left out when it comes to celebrating. But ours, the only thing is that we celebrate it a little bit earlier, as opposed to now the same time as the Chinese Spring Festival usually happens.
Feifei, An aspect that Cynthia has raised is the aspect of migration that will probably be affected this year. I want to get your personal story as a Chinese in the diaspora. How do you normally celebrate the New Year, and is it different this year?
Well, for sure, Beatrice, is very different. As we talked about earlier, one of the biggest aspects of the Chinese New Year is about family getting together. And the Chinese diaspora is huge. Even within China, as you know, there's been the trend of rural people moving into the urban cities to work. Now, that's about 400 million Chinese people that usually participate in this Chunyun, which is the largest annual migration of human beings in the world every year. Now, besides outside of China in the world, we also have some different scale of that, with Chinese people going home to China to visit their loved ones, their families. And that's the case for me. I am living here and working here in Africa, but my mom is still there. So usually every year, this is a great opportunity for her to come and spend some time with me in Africa. And she's been doing this every year. It's a very important part of our family tradition. Unfortunately, this is the first year that she cannot come. And I think this story probably resonates with a lot of Chinese people who are all over the world, that we cannot be with our families during this time. You know, the Chinese government has even called on Chinese people within China to stay put and not to participate in this large migration to go home. And I think that is the right call to make, no? Even though we're making some small personal sacrifice for this year, it's probably more important that everyone stays healthy. In any case, it's a balance that every family has to consider now.
All right. Professor Pong, I want to look at the cultural aspect of it, because this is the year of the ox. Tell us about the ox. Tell us a bit about the meaning of the ox and what exactly it symbolizes and what is the significance for this year.
Yeah. Ox is an industrial animal with strength. They belonging for farm before also symbolize the steadfast, dependent, bullish, so also can bring you wealth. So compare with last year of rat, it's really an auspicious animal. So there is a Chinese legend that the ox is the fairy from heaven and God sent him helping plowing. So we hope it can drive away the virus and people can recover their work and study. Yeah.
So in the traditional sense, Professor Pong, in the traditional sense, what is it we expect from the year of the ox? What exactly is in store for the year 2021?
Yeah, so you know, in the last year, the rat bring us the virus, but perhaps unfair. Yeah, the rat also can delegate like this smart and flexible. So, but ox, yeah, in large degree in China, that it delegate the strength, yeah, the work hard, yeah. So we expect, we hope that the ox can drive away the virus and bring the strength, the wealth, the work, yeah, to all the people.
Cynthia, it does have some significance as well for African communities, the ox that I mean. In terms of, especially for farming communities, it has a sense of strength, reliability. What is the cultural significance of the ox for Africa?
Let me just link it with now the Chinese, whereby they're saying that the ox signifies like prosperity, wealth, diligence, hard work, and all those things. So in Africa, I believe that is the same thing. If you have a lot of cows, if you have a lot of cows, basically it signifies that you are wealthy. If you don't have, maybe you only have one, also still it's the same thing. So if I can link it now with the African aspect, it's just the same thing. The ox, it is used especially in the farming society where we use the ox to farm with it, to plow with it. And yeah, basically that's the thing that I can say, because it also has its own benefits, because we can also, like the meat and also the milk, it has so many things. So it's a very, for us, I can say it is also a very fortunate animal. It's a fortunate animal. So it's also a very good animal for us Africans.
All right, we'll leave it there for the moment, but we'll continue with this discussion after the short break. We're going to take a break now, and when we return, we'll have more on Chinese New Year 2021. Stay with us.
Life moves pretty fast. Ideas move at the speed of sound. Technology moves at the speed of light. If you don't filter out the noise, you might miss the details. We pay attention to the details because they matter, showing you a different perspective. See the difference.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Well, still with me on the program, Professor Pong Yi, Liu Feifei, and Cynthia Wendo. Before the break, we looked at some of the history of the New Year festival. Let's now look at how it has evolved over time. Feifei, let me start off with you because you're a Chinese national living overseas. Tell us about the significance of the ceremony, where you are, and how it has evolved over time. And do you, as a Chinese national overseas, still have the same significant meaning about the New Year as Chinese at home?
Well, absolutely, Beatrice. I think, for people of Chinese descent who are overseas, the Chinese New Year is perhaps even more important, because when you're a Chinese person in China, you're surrounded by your culture and tradition every day. But when you're overseas, is that one time in the year when you really, really be proud of this amazing cultural heritage that we have. It's interesting, as we mentioned earlier, I was in China in the early 70s. And back then, as a very young kid, I might add, before the economic reforms, this was in Beijing. I looked forward so much to Chinese New Year personally, because it was the one day in the year where we could actually have 鸡鸭鱼肉. This is chicken, duck, fish, which is very important symbolically for Chinese. Fish symbolizes plentifulness. So, and ro, which is meat, and it's not just pork, we meant red meat, beef, and a good soup and the good food. So back then in the 70s, for me as a little kid, growing up in the North, it was really about getting this great meal. And now, some 40 years later, well, this is really no longer the case in China, right? In Beijing, which I know you've been to on many occasions, there are good restaurants everywhere. So, Chinese New Year in and of itself, to me, has evolved even in China. Now, my overseas experience is something quite the opposite. 40 years ago, maybe few people isolated in various Chinatowns around the world celebrated Chinese New Year's. But in my personal experience, Chinese New Year has become a global phenomenon.
Right. So, Feifei, I want to come to Mauritius as an example, because Mauritius has had COVID-free celebrations, which began, taking place in the past weekend. What are we seeing from Mauritius? How big is the celebration this year?
Yeah, Mauritius has been very fortunate because the government took action very early to control the inbound flights. And also, even till today, there is a mandatory quarantine of 15 days. So the country largely has stayed COVID safe, meaning that there are some people with COVID-19 who have come in through their flights and they're put into quarantine already. It's not out in the general population. As such, Chinese New Year is being celebrated. Now, one of the biggest things they have is this annual gala, followed by an annual Chinatown parade. So this year, they kind of took a very balanced approach, in my opinion. They proceeded with the gala, which had a couple thousand people in it by the looks of it, and then they've canceled the parade.
So, Professor Pong, we're hearing about the safety that countries are taking from that example from Feifei in celebrating in a milder way, but as well as trying to keep safe during the celebrations. How do you keep the balance, though, in terms of trying to remain festive for the celebrations, but also remain safe because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so although we are influenced domestically, but we still can organize and enjoy some like virtual celebration. For example, on 12th February, the first day of the new year, my institute will host a virtual celebration in partnership with the Culture Office Chinese Embassy in South Africa through the Zoom. Students and staff from University of Johannesburg, the Wits University, University of South Africa, overseas Chinese here, and the local friends will join us. Yeah.
All right. So, Cynthia, Feifei raised an interesting point about the global nature of the world now. And as the world becomes a global village, we are seeing more of each other's traditions being accepted by various societies across Africa and across the world during the Chinese festivities. Are you seeing Africa taking up a lot more of the Chinese festivity celebrations?
The festivities of China, there are so many. And the major ones are there, and some of them that you are celebrating are the ones which you can hear, that the famous ones, that are the New Year Spring Festival, the Chunjie. And there are also others which are the Lantern Festivals. There's also the Mid-Autumn Festival. These are some of the festivals that are usually celebrated here in Kenya, some of them due to like the awareness from the embassy, awareness from the schools. So if it's something that it will be made more, that is, it is more known, well known, then I don't think that it is something that people will not celebrate. I think one of the things is that for the Africans, we have that perspective whereby we don't want to take other people's culture. You know, we want to remain who we are. And when we are talking about the Chinese, you know, festivals and also the African festival, we just want to appreciate each and every single countries or culture that is presented amongst us, because we cannot live a culture in culture. We are not alone. We have to live with other people and also know exactly how they move, how they live, and how we can bond with them, because we are not it's a village. Okay, so basically we are meeting together and we need to know how these people they live, how these people they also react and such things. So I think it's a very, very important thing, and also a good thing for us to even to learn their culture. And also another thing is that for also the other countries to also learn our culture.
So I want to get a final comment from all of you and your thoughts for the future as we get into the year of the ox, as we celebrate the Spring Festival. On a personal note, let me start off with you, Feifei. What are your hopes for the year of the ox?
I hope for the year of the ox, indeed, that all the instability and unpredictability of the year of the rat is gone. And with this new beginning is a safe and healthy year for everybody in the world.
Professor Pong?
I hope the virus can come down soon and all of us be safe, healthy, happy, and could get a great achievements in their study and work this year.
Cynthia, your final word.
Okay, what I can say is that I wish all my Chinese friends a happy new year, and I'm wishing them a prosperous one. So I believe that the rat year was something which was awful, but this ox year, let us be optimistic about this ox year. Let us do that which we need to do, and also go ahead with confidence and courage, and make sure that we try as much as possible to just take care of our families, take care of our health.
Indeed, our hopes for the year 2021. Well, that's all we have time for this week on the program. But thank you to my guests, Professor Pong Yi, Co-Director, University of Johannesburg, Confucius Institute, Liu Feifei, our CGTN correspondent in Mauritius, and Cynthia Wendo, Chinese lecturer at Strathmore University. Remember, we'd love to hear your feedback through our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. You can also catch the show on our YouTube playlist. Do keep the conversation going and tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team in Nairobi, it's goodbye and 新年快乐.